Good evening, everybody. My name is Ben Southall, founder of Best Life Adventures. Welcome to Wild Earth Australia's Wild Chats. For about an hour, every couple of weeks, we speak to an amazingly adventurous person from a different part of the world. We have spoken to people that have scaled large mountains in the Himalayas, who have crossed the Arctic solo, people that are Indigenous elders within Australia. We have this plethora of people who use the great outdoors as their classroom. And tonight in Australia, but this morning back in good old Blighty, where I'm from, we have an amazing lady who, when I found out I was going to be interviewing Elspeth Beard, I started to dig a little bit deeper because my passion for the world and overland travel comes from reading the stories and the journeys of people like Elspeth, who are the pioneers of overland adventures. Elspeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
To just give a bit of a heads up on who you are, we like our guests to sort of give maybe a 20 to 30-second elevator pitch. The thing that you do when you open, or the bio that you send to someone when you're going to do a talking gig. Just tell our audience who you are and what you do.
I am an architect, firstly, I suppose. I've had my own architectural practice, but when I was 23 years old, so from 1982 to 1984, I set off around the world on my own on my BMW R7 R60/6, and rode and spent just over 2 years riding all around the world.
And that, in a nutshell, is what grabbed me by the horns and said, this is going to be an amazing hour. We get just about an hour to talk. We usually go through people's life, how they grew up, where they grew up, how they started their field of adventure. Today, when I look at the channel that we will use to showcase this story, which is usually Instagram, I quite often see people that are out there doing these journeys, but they do it through the camera lens rather than through their own eyes. And back in the days when you were doing your travel and when I first did mine, mine was only 2008, but this was pre-Instagram, pre-social media. It was very much about living it through being in the moment, about doing it through your own experience, as opposed to promotion and partners deals and creating content. It must feel like a world apart now.
Yes, it was a totally different time. Not only were there's no social media or internet. We didn't have phones. There were no maps for a lot of the countries. It was impossible to find out about anything about where you were going. I always used to try and find out. I would wait until I was in the sort of country, and then I would start to ask questions about the next country I was going to go to. And I would ask anybody I could possibly find, what the roads were like, what the petrol was like, could you get petrol, what the food was like, any information I could find. And so you very much just had to do. You couldn't plan anything. I think nowadays people do probably slightly over plan things. That does take away quite a lot of the adventure, because I think when you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know where you're going to be or how far you're going to get or where you're going to stay, or whether you're, every day is far more, I don't know, sort of, you just have to deal with things on a day-to-day basis, and you can't think that far ahead about the trip or where you're going to be. And I found that more of a, yeah, it was a lot more spontaneous, I think. And it was for me now. I travel now still, but it was far more of a kind of real adventure in those days. And I'm so glad I got to travel when I did. So glad.
The parts of that resonate so much with me. I have a later history of world travel in a Land Rover, much sort of a safer, because you've got your box that you're surviving in rather than out in the raw elements. The bit that resonates with me with that is when I had planned our trip from Singapore through to London. I planned the countries to go through, what paperwork I'd need. And when the Iranian visa was refused, I had to turn at right angles and go up through the north of Pakistan, up into China, into Kyrgyzstan. But I'd done no research. And that was the same as your sort of trip, where you didn't know what you needed at the border. You didn't know the people, the roads, the quality of the fuel. That's where the adventure starts. That's when the
Yeah.
stories come. Because otherwise, you're just ticking the list of expectation.
Yeah. I I always say that when things go wrong, that's when the adventure begins.
Absolutely.
If you
Absolutely.
do things, it's all planned, you're following this red line on a screen, you know, really? It's not about riding your bike, or driving it's about all the amazing experiences, the people you meet, the situations that you have to deal with. You just have to, and you learn so much about yourself and what your capabilities are and what you can do. And, you can't do that if everything is so pre-planned beforehand. So you have to be thrown in the deep end with a situation that you just have to deal with there and then. You don't. And in those days, I didn't have a phone, I didn't have an internet, I couldn't search things, I was completely reliant on myself, um, and asking local people. That was it.
I think we need to strip back the elements of what makes you the human you are. And that obviously goes back to the very early days. Where did you grow up? What was family life like? Where was your inspiration coming from?
Well, I grew up in central London. I had both my parents were doctors, but I was very fortunate. They gave us a huge amount of freedom when we were growing up, and I think as we always used to go on these slightly crazy family holidays, um, but I think which in the 1970s was not that common, in the UK. So
Mm.
and so I think it sort of made me, all of us, realize, my brother and sister, it made us all realize that there was this whole world out there to be explored. So I suppose this thing of travel was instilled in us in a very early age. We were doing these crazy holidays when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, up to like 15, I think, when I refused to go after that. But so 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 I think there was always this thing of adventure and travel, and there was this world out there to be explored. I was lucky that my parents gave us a lot of freedom, which was
Yeah.
fantastic. And they always taught us to think independently, I think, which was great. So that was my kind of background. I was sent off to boarding school when I was 10, but I got expelled when I was 16, which was actually at the time was one
Oh
of the
my
worst,
goodness.
the end
The
of my life.
community would have spoken.
And anyway, but fortunately, I was sent to this college in London to finish off my A levels. And it was at this college in London where I got to meet this group of motorcyclists, and that
Right.
was my introduction to bikes. And so I became friendly with them, and then I ended up buying a little Yamaha YB100
I
from
love it.
Simon, who's still a
Brilliant.
friend today. And that was simply a cheap and easy way to get around London. That was it. And
But
I
it
used
was
to,
your gateway drug of the time, by the sounds of it.
sorry.
It was the gateway drug into the world of motorcycles.
Exactly. But with these two wheels, I suddenly had freedom. I could go
Mm.
places. And so I used to hack all over London, absolutely loved it. I was 17. So this was back in 1977, I think,
Wow.
77, 78. And then and then I wanted to go a little bit faster. So then I bought myself a Honda 250, and
Yeah.
I had that for a year. But on my Honda 250, I passed my test, which meant I could ride any bike. And then after a year of the Honda, I was wanted to go a little bit faster. So I then bought my 60 stroke 6, which was a BMW. It was a 1974. So it was already
Okay.
six years old when I bought her.
Yeah.
But it was kind of that bike that made me realize, you could seriously go places on this. This was a serious bike, and you
What was
could,
the reason behind that as a choice of bike? Was it sort of had you sort of read other people's books, or was it just someone said, if you want to go and do stuff that's greater than just going around London, this is what you need?
No, I didn't really think about it as a bike to do long distance traveling. I kind of always wanted a BMW, and I suppose
Hmm.
in those days now that I mean there wasn't this vast choice of
Mm.
motorcycles that you have now. I mean, you had the Brit bikes which just leaked oil. You then had the Jap bikes which were all kind of fairly new on the market, and as we used to call them, Jap crap, because
Yeah.
they used to fall apart.
Yeah.
And then like just a whole leagues ahead of that, then you had the BMWs, and that was
Yeah.
kind of it. So I didn't want a bike that I had to service and spend half my time trying to keep the oil in. I didn't want a rubbish bike that was going to fall apart. So my kind of goal, I suppose, was to have a BMW. They were solid, they were reliable, German engineering, all that kind of appeals to me. I like all that stuff. I like things that are tough and robust and I can rely on and aren't going to fall apart. And so I just bought the BMW. And then I think the first trip I did was up to Scotland on
Yeah.
my own. And then I went round Ireland. And then the following summer, I went round Europe.
Okay.
And then in the summer of 81, I flew out to Los Angeles and I bought myself a really old BMW 750, an R75 stroke 5. And I rode that from the West Coast to the East Coast. And that
Okay.
kind of gave me the sort of taste for long, sort of serious, quite serious long distance. And I think I was somewhere, I don't know, in the middle of Arizona riding through the deserts or something. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be amazing if you could ride your motorbike around or ride a motorbike around the world? But it was like one of these some of the crazy little thoughts that comes into your head that you never think you'll do. In a million years you'll never do it. It's not possible. And I know that sounds daft now to think that, but then the world was a much bigger place, as I say,
Yes.
without internet,
Yeah.
without social media, phone, all that. It was really difficult to find anything out about anywhere, and so I just the whole thought of riding a motorbike out into this unknown world was it was just something I just thought I would never ever do. It was a whole series of events that happened to me the following year. So at this stage, I'd started doing my architecture. So I'd started training as an architect, and I was doing my first 3 years. And while I was studying architecture, I met and fell in love with this guy called Alex.
Hmm.
And he finished our relationship about 2 or 3 months before my finals. So I did really badly I couldn't work. I did
Yeah.
really badly in my finals. So the summer of 82, I was miserable. I was brokenhearted. I had a lousy degree. And I thought, I got to get out of here. So I thought, I'm going to see if I can ride my bike around the world. That
So
was it.
this is your eat, pray, love moment where the world has imploded. Everything that you'd sort of put on your future mantra list almost had disappeared. So you had the freedom to do things, and the harebrained idea for a journey around planet Earth sounds like it came from not being fed content from other people's books. It was pre-websites. It was very much, I just want to go and do it. I've given myself the credibility by going and doing these smaller trips, and now I feel like I can go and take on the world.
Yeah, I just wanted an adventure. I wanted to see the world. I loved riding my bike. I mean, I knew wasn't going to be easy. I knew it was
Mm.
going to be fairly tough, but I just needed a challenge. I suppose I needed something to distract me from my pain and my broken heart and my lousy degree and what am I going to do with my life and all that kind of stuff. I just needed a complete distraction, something to focus on, concentrate on, something I was going to have to really work hard at, and a challenge. And to me, it seemed like the perfect thing to do.
The internal smile that is bubbling up and coursing through my veins right now is a carbon copy in the male version of what I then was doing in my brain, 15 years after you were having those thoughts, because I'd sort of come out of university and not got the qualifications I really wanted to or needed to. It was that what do I do next moment. And having had a few trips, solo trips into Southern Africa, and hired a 4-wheel drive to do a small trip to Mozambique and one to Namibia, the next one in the head was next time I come to Cape Town, I'm driving here. And so this is the same sort of thing that you'd done, but you'd obviously got no of the research tools. I'd got into forums and the early days of travelers' websites and sort of looked at concepts. I knew what I wanted to do and I knew my route. When did you sort of work out where you wanted to go? Or was it just, I'm going to hit the road and go east until I get back to where I started?
Well, I actually headed west. So after I finished my course and had my lousy degree, that was in the May, June of 82. And I decided pretty soon after that, within weeks, actually, that I was going to do this round the world trip. So I got, but because I'd been a student for 3 years, I had no
Funds at
money
all.
at all. So I got myself a job in the local pub, and I worked 7 days a week, literally 12 hours a day. So start at 8 o'clock in the morning, finish at midnight, on minimum wage. So I was earning £1.75 an hour. I remember it, the last penny. Slave labor, I can tell you. And I worked and I saved. So after 3 months, I'd saved £2,500. And I thought, right, I'll take that. I'll go with what I've got, because I think the problem is if you always wait until it's perfect, you never go. The right vehicle, the right gear, the right amount of money, you just never do it. So I thought, and because I'd ridden across America the year before, I kind of felt sort of safe. I mean, I was only 23 when I left, so I really didn't have much. I didn't have a clue what I was doing.
And Elspeth, but a particularly gorgeous lady shod in leathers on the back of a motorbike, if any of those archive photos are anything to go by, I will have to say. So doing this solo, what did mum and dad think?
Oh, that's a very good question. Well, my mum obviously did everything she could possibly do to stop me from going.
Yeah.
She hated motorbikes with a vengeance, absolutely hated them. Having been a doctor and working in A&E for doing all her house jobs, she saw all these injured motorcyclists. And so, she couldn't understand why anybody would want to ride a motorbike, let alone around the world. I mean, it was just a whole nother planet to her. So she did everything she could possibly do. But actually, the more she tried to stop me, the more, as always, you're determined to do it. My dad was a very eccentric psychiatrist, and he never really said anything very much. He just kept quiet. In a strange way, I think he was quite proud of what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
But he couldn't give me any praise or encouragement because he knew that my mum was so against it. So yeah, it wasn't great, to be honest. But anyway, I was very determined to do it. And I mean, they couldn't stop me, basically. I'd earned all my own money. I'd bought my bike with my own money. I hadn't taken anything from them. So I was completely independent as far as that was concerned. And they taught me to, they brought me up as a free thinking, adventurous, travel, see the world sort of
Doing
child.
exactly
So
what they'd asked you to do in the first place, really. So you've got £2,500 in the pocket. You've got a bike that is prepped, engineering knowledge and know-how to keep this thing going.
Well, that's So while I was working my 7 days a week in the pub, any little time, because the pubs used to close at 3:30 and open again at 5:30. So I had 2 hours in the afternoon when I wasn't working. So I decided to teach myself as much as I could about my motorbike. So I bought myself some basic tools, Haynes manual, and then I just stripped the bike down and learned about it the best I could. And because the bike then, so when I left on my trip, my bike was already 8 years old and she already had 45,000 miles on her.
Wow.
So she was a fairly well, I wouldn't say for a BMW, not that well used, but
Just
she
run
was,
in. Yeah.
she was not new. She was certainly not a new bike. So while I was teaching myself all of the mechanics and how the bike worked, I did everything I could possibly do. So I replaced all the oil seals, the gaskets, I put new cables in, obviously new battery, new tires. I bought myself a bigger tank, so I had a more range. Um, I mean, anything I could do to get her in as best condition as I could before I left, and at the same time, I learnt how to fix her and how she worked and what spares I needed to take, all that kind of stuff. So it was a very steep learning curve. But I also used to go down to the local BMW dealership in Clapham, and I used to sneak around the back to the mechanics, and I used to, smile nicely
I bet
and
they
and
loved it.
answer
Yes.
and pick their brains and ask them all these questions about how does this work and how do you do that, and then timing, and when I do the timing, how exactly where do I put, all. So I used to, and they were great. They really helped me, and then I'd go back to the garage and I'd do it all. So I just taught myself basically.
You headed west, and how far in your head did you have planned of that journey? Talk us through the sort of first, maybe the last couple of days leading up to, and the feel and the rush and the exhilaration, and then actually twisting that throttle for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I was very apprehensive. I mean, as the day of my departure, well, I mean, the day of my departure, because I shipped my bike to New York first,
Mm.
and then I waited until I heard it had actually arrived, and then I got on my flight. So my departure date kind of wasn't kind of fixed until pretty much right at the last minute. And I think I was on a Freddie Laker 99 pound standby from London to New York, and and then I kind of battled to get my bike out of customs in New York, and then I was just relieved to get out of New York. I can't actually remember that the first day I twisted the throttle and started. I just wanted to get out of New York and get onto the open road, and then I headed north up to Canada, to Niagara Falls, then all the way down to New Orleans, and then across
Yeah,
the bottom states, sort of Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California. And I suppose in my mind, I knew I only had £2,500,
yes,
and I hoped that that would get me either to New Zealand or Australia, Commonwealth countries. I could, speak English. I could hopefully get a job reasonably easily where I could earn the money and worry about the next leg of my journey. So
that
I
makes
didn't really
perfect sense.
think anything more than I've got 2,500. I've got to get to New Zealand or Australia and then I'll get another job. That was it.
One of the questions that people ask a lot of the time when they are considering maybe their first adventure, their first big adventure to go and do is how you start, how you get the idea of going from a concept into actually getting on and doing it. And the answer I almost always give is when you go public, when you tell your friends, when you tell your family, you're accountable. And once you put that date down and you say, this is my departure date, you really do work towards a line in the sand or a line on the calendar. Had you sort of gone ahead and done that, or was yours just one that drifted and drifted, or you just adamant, 28th of December, that's me gone?
Well, I think I mean, I knew I wanted to leave before the winter. I didn't want to
Mm,
spend another winter in the UK, you know, not sort of trying to find a job that I wasn't going to be that interested in, that I probably couldn't get anyway. Do you know what I mean? I was keen to, so I knew I was going to leave in the end of the autumn. That was
uh-huh.
about as far as I did. But you're quite right. I mean, when I kind of first told my friends, "Oh yes, I'm going to ride my bike around the world," I mean, once they got once they stopped laughing, they realized I might actually be serious. I then realized, oh my God, I've actually got to do this
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit sort of finding myself having to do it because I said I was going to do it. But I mean, obviously I wanted to at the same time, but it was a little element of that, of sort of having told everybody you're going to go and you're going to do this, you kind of feel. But then the minute you're off and you're out and you're on the road, then all those everything, it just changes. I mean, your doubts kind of start to go. You realize. I mean, I always say one of the hardest things is actually leaving.
Yeah.
You know, just
I've just
taking that step and actually leaving. That's one of the hardest things to do, because you'll always find excuses why, oh, maybe I won't leave this month, maybe I'll leave next month, and maybe I haven't quite got enough money, I don't think I've quite got the right bike, or anything. I don't know, come up with excuses, but you're only coming up with excuses to yourself, because
slow
actually you
yourself
can leave
down.
anytime.
Yes. Yeah.
And you just
One of
work
the
it.
One of the things that you must have been more than anything is, in a way, a conversation starter. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about leaving the comfort of your own country, and certainly countries that are driven by having a wage and having to have the house. The only reason I'm saying it's a hot topic for me right now, because I 5 days ago got back from Botswana, and we were in a four-wheel drive, self-driving for 2 weeks. And everybody wants to stop and talk, and you have conversations, and you have offers to come and have tea or dinner. And then I come back into Australia, and it's the same when I came back into England, and everyone's sort of got the blinkers on, and they're going about their day-to-day lives, and no one really asks questions about anybody else. There's no concern outside of their own day. And I've felt that so much so this time coming back. You must have had some of the most amazing people, conversations, catch-ups during those journeys, because you were by yourself and you sort of have to push yourself out there.
Yeah, although being a woman on my own, I was slightly cautious, to be honest. I didn't really,
Yeah.
I was just careful. I was careful. So I didn't,
Yeah.
I mean, I did meet people. And in fact, oddly enough, it was more in the countries like Southeast Asia and probably more Southeast Asia, where the locals were very, um, would come up to me and try and help me and offer me cups of tea and come and stay and have dinner with us and all this kind of stuff. I mean, the States was a very strange, and I'd kind of had a little bit of that when I'd ridden across the States before, but riding across America, because an awful lot of the, Easy Rider had come out in
Of course.
78 or something.
Yeah.
And there was this very quite, I certainly felt it, sort of anti-biker thing in America. And I think most Americans can't tell the difference between a sort of Harley Davidson with the wheel 15 feet out with not wearing a helmet and all that, to me, on a BMW. But you know what I mean? They couldn't distinguish between different types of motorcyclists or different types of. So we were all kind of grouped in. We all seemed to be grouped in to be dirty, greasy
Yes.
troublemakers,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And it was only when I took my helmet off when I was in America, people would suddenly realize I was a woman, which wasn't that common in those days. And all of a sudden it was all fine. I wasn't a threat. I wasn't going to, do whatever they thought I was going to do to them. So America was it was a strange, I did get a very strange sort of, reception in America. And then traveling through the Outback in Australia in 19 I better be careful here. In
You go.
1982.
This is a free reign to say whatever you want, because I
All right,
fully
all right.
understand. I fully
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. In 1983, I was traveling around. So anyway, so eventually, so I went to New Zealand, then I got to Sydney, and I had £50 when I arrived in Sydney. So I worked in
Nothing
Sydney for
at
6 months. I worked in Sydney for 6 months. I had two jobs. I worked as an architect's assistant during the day and worked in the pub at night. And so I was there for 6 months. And then after that, I started to travel around Australia. So I kind of traveled from Sydney up the east coast and then across the middle, three ways, Alice Springs down to Port Augusta, and then the Nullarbor across to Perth.
Brilliant.
So, but the Outback, and I don't know, for some reason, no idea why, I thought Australia was going to be like really easy, you know, riding into the sunset, and it was all going to be, you know, a lovely holiday. And Australia, the Outback in Australia had to be one of the toughest mentally and physically parts of the trip. You know, the mileage, I was doing 500 miles a day. It was 52 degrees. The next day it was
Wow.
floods, it was rain. I had kangaroos, flies, road trains. You know, it was just exhausting, absolutely exhausting. And I didn't feel particularly welcome in the Outback either, I have to say. And I used to go into these road houses in the middle of nowhere, and I wasn't greeted with I mean, you know, wasn't
It's a
that
diff.
great.
It's I think it's probably familiarity. People. I drove this thing. Very easy, 100 k's on the clock from Brisbane across to Alice Springs across the Simpson Desert last winter, so almost 12 months ago now. And the roads are heavily populated these days with what the Australians call the grey nomads, and these are extremely well off. Most of the time, retirees who have cashed in the house. They bought themselves a big four-wheel drive or a Winnebago and a big caravan, and the campsites are full in the middle of the outback of these people that are adventurous grey nomads with their Starlink system set up, and it's a normal route of traffic now. So for you to go and do that as a traveller that wasn't transporting goods in a road train, or one of the crazy randoms that maybe was cycling around the world, it would have seemed very bizarre and very strange to have sort of walked in, you know, in the mid-70s to go and do that. So I'm not saying I justify or understand the response. I'm just saying it was an anomaly.
Yes, I can understand it. Obviously, now
Yeah.
looking back, I can understand it. You know, and the other thing you have to realize, these people who live and work in the outback, it's a harsh life, for
Yeah.
goodness
Yeah.
sake.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
it's really harsh. But of course, when you're 24 and you're just trying to ride your bike around and you expect people to be kind of nice. Well, I wouldn't say they weren't nice, but you know, I didn't feel I was welcome very much in the outback. But I mean, I wasn't treated awfully. It just, you know, it wasn't a very warm welcome. And I think, as you say, it was probably just because they'd never kind of seen. I was just a kind of sort of oddity, you know. There was this straight, and I shaved all my hair. So when I left, I had really
Right.
long hair, and I got
Yeah.
tired of washing it and plaiting it and brushing it. And so before I left Sydney, I thought, right, make my life simple. So I almost shaved my head.
Wow, that was
I had
brazen.
really, really short hair. So I probably did look a bit, you know, strange.
Like another feature out of the Mad Max films, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, but
I'm super curious about now you see people, and you know, this is part of Wild Earth. Wild Earth is an amazing community of adventurous people. It's all about the outdoors, but gear is a big part of that because you can read reviews, you can get ultra lightweights, you get backpackers and bike packers that have strapped their tents on, they've got everything they need to live in on that bike. Where were you staying? Were you just finding road houses? Did you have a tent? How did you sort of accommodate yourself?
most of the outback I camped actually. And I
Mm.
camped completely on my own because they had those every like if there wasn't a roadhouse, I mean, there was normally a roadhouse every 4 to 500 miles, depending on
Mm.
which part you were in. But then they would have these kind of toilet stops where literally you
Yes.
just parked. There was a little, you know, with some toilets. You could get water. That was it, and you just stopped on the side of the road. And so I used to pull off into those, and I just used to camp. And most nights I was there entirely on my own.
Wow. And the range of the bike allowed you to get between these because you got the long range tanks. Did you sort of get yourself into, you must have been a number of sticky situations where you're looking at the tank gauge and you're thinking, when am I going to be running on vapor and when's this going to start to shudder?
Yeah, so before I left, I changed my tank from a 3 gallon to a 5 gallon. And my bike did about 65 to the gallon, depending obviously on what speed I was doing. So I had about 320.
Yeah.
I slightly doctored my kind of reserve taps. So I had two reserves. So I cut one of the straws down
Yeah.
slightly further. So I had a little bit more reserve. So I had a double reserve. So that
Okay.
gave me a little bit. And then and you got to think, I spent hours and hours and hours just with my head in my helmet thinking of things to do. And one of the things was always working out my mileage,
Yes.
how many miles I was doing per gallon, exactly what speed I was doing, and how long I'd been doing 60, and then I'd gone down to 50, and then I'd gone down to 45, and then I got this number of miles out of it.
Yeah. So you're
And I used
constantly,
to
the abacus is clicking
all these
away.
calculations in my head, and when my reserve would come in, and then when my second reserve would come in.
This is
And
so
actually,
in line with, yeah.
Australia was the only place I carried a little bit of fuel. I didn't
Mm.
carry much, to be fair.
But the distances
Um,
are so vast, especially when there's not the established road network that there is now, which has got bitumen, which is more economical to drive on. You've got the reliability on other drivers. You must have been a sole entity that had that sort of range compared to the, six trailered road trains.
yeah, yeah. Well, in those days, they were only allowed to carry three.
Okay. Yeah, it's such an amazing part of Australian life. I remember I grew up in England till I was about 24, 25, then spent a lot of time in Southern Africa. But it was always that story. It was always, it was Ayers Rock in those days rather than Uluru. And it was always the
Yeah.
Australian iconic road train was a thing that one day I would get to see. And you must have sort of had some dust in the face when you were going
Oh,
past some of those.
I used to hate those things. They just used to do like 70, 80 miles an hour. They were not going to stop for anything. And I mean, I just used to dread these things coming towards me. I used to get right off the road in the dirt and just wait for this thing to pass because I
Yeah.
just didn't want to go anywhere near it. And then when this thing had passed, I then get back on the road again. And when I was there in 83, I think Queensland were having this major road work thing going on. And so there were roads closed everywhere. I was sent off in the bush and the whatever for like 50-mile diversions. I mean,
Detours.
not just 5 miles, 50 bloody miles. And I'd never ridden off road before. So there I was
Wow.
bouncing around
Wow.
in the Outback in Queensland. Never ridden off road before. It was a bloody great bike, and I'd built these huge aluminium top box and panniers when I was in Sydney. So I had this massive aluminium thing on the back of my bike, which didn't make it particularly easy to handle.
Mm.
So yeah, it was Queensland was tough, but all Australia was quite.
Elspeth, you'll
And
be
then of
very
course,
happy to know that those roadworks are still ongoing in Queensland now. Today, across all of the main road, the main artery that goes from north to south up to Cairns, we are subject to that a lot of the time. I'm about 10 kilometres or 6 miles from those roadworks. So, yes, thank you for reminding me how bad they are.
that's all right. I remember them well.
So the route's taken us, we've gone through the Americas, we've gone down, we've come across New Zealand and we've come into Australia. Where did you sort of head to from there? Did you have the plan or was it, okay, let's see where my currency runs out?
Not really. So when I was in Sydney, I saved $6,000, which was pretty
Mm,
good for 6 months.
yeah.
And But again, I had no reference. I had no idea how much money I needed to get home. Didn't have a clue. I hadn't spoken to anybody who had ever done a trip like it before. There was nothing on the internet. You couldn't find out anything. And I had no idea how much things cost in Thailand or Southeast Asia or
Yes.
India
Yeah.
or I never, nothing. I had no idea how much petrol was. I had not a clue. So I just thought, well, I can't stay here for more than 6 months. I can't work any harder. So I can't save any more money than I've saved. So that's what I'm going to go on, and I'll worry about the rest of it as and when I have to. So I had $6,000, and then I got to Perth, and then I tried to, because I wanted to travel up through Indonesia, but it was
Okay.
really difficult to find out about any boat crossings from island to island to island. In fact, it was impossible. So I kind of decided to ship my bike straight to Singapore, which
Yeah.
was kind of relatively easy, and it was cheap because it was a
The
main
main
route,
traffic
if you
route.
know what I mean.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
quite cheap. And then I travelled up. So while my bike was en route, I travelled up through Bali, Java, and Sumatra on foot by public transport. And then I went back down to Singapore, picked up my bike in Singapore, and then rode up through Malaysia and up Thailand. I went right up to the northern bit of Thailand, up to Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai and the Golden Triangle. And then I tried to get through Burma, but I couldn't because all the road borders were closed. So I then had to ride all the way back down to Penang in Malaysia
My God,
and
that's a
ship my
detour.
oh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
And then ship my bike across to India
Yeah.
to Madras.
Yeah.
So I shipped to Madras, I went up to Calcutta, up to Kathmandu, and did a trek while I was in Kathmandu. And then I met my parents in Kathmandu, which is very bizarre. and then and then went back into India, Leh and Ladakh, and Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, Greece, Europe, back home.
This is
So
fascinating because you're sort of echoing. I suppose I'm echoing actually your route, having not read about it until the setup of this podcast. I similar sort of way, shipped to Singapore using. I mean, I'm assuming carnet de passage was a thing. The passport for your vehicle. It was a temporary import document. You need that as well as your own passport to get stamped in and out of every country. The same way that we're still travelling today, but obviously quite a unique method of moving around the planet in those days.
yes, no, yeah. So when I was in Sydney, I organised my carnet, which I had to organise with the AA here,
Yes.
in the UK, because it has to be within the country that your vehicle is registered. So I had this thing of organising my carnet because I didn't need it for America, or Australia actually. So it was only after I left Australia that I needed my carnet de passage.
It feels like the route that I then took was similar. The Singapore, Cambodia, Laos into the top end of Thailand. We managed to get through Myanmar and Burma in those days, and then back into the northeastern side, Assam and Bengal side of India. It feels like that is a very well travelled section of the world now. Southeast Asia, sorry, has really opened up to backpacker travel. It's well documented. It's almost oversaturated with tourism. The areas that I'm thinking about when you would have gone there, I've now taken motorbike trips with clients up to the north of Ladakh, into Manali, up into Leh, up over the high Himalayas there. In those days, and those roads must have been extremely raw and brutal.
They were, but actually it was great. One of my favourite parts of the whole trip was actually Kashmir, Leh, and Ladakh. It was just stunningly beautiful, and with nobody. I mean, we didn't see a single vehicle or car or nothing in a whole day. I mean,
heavily militarized then or not?
That Kashmir was.
Yeah.
Well, it was fairly. I mean, there were these convoys of army trucks, like 30, 50 army trucks, all in a row. There were lots of those riding up through Kashmir, but actually, once we got up to Kashmir into Leh and Ladakh, it was completely empty.
And if you hadn't stood
Totally
out like a
empty.
sore thumb leading up to that point, as an individual lone female rider coming up against the Border Roads Association military, which are there in mass numbers these days, because obviously China and India is such a disputed area. It must have been interesting, just the conversations when the helmet came off. The heads must have gone a lot.
Well, yes, India was interesting. It was. I did. Yeah, I mean, I think I was. They had never seen a BMW motorbike before,
Right.
so that was this whole kind of, what is this? And then
was it all Royal Enfields then, or was it other bikes in India?
It was Enfields, but most of it India. Then everybody cycled. I saw one or two Enfields. I don't know. I probably saw a total of 5 Enfields in 8 months.
Wow.
That was kind of it.
Haven't they
was
had
on
a resurgence
bicycle.
in the last few years?
Yeah, just a bit. I was back in India actually last year, and I'd never seen so many motorbikes.
No, our group went up there in September. We did exactly that. We took the Bullet 500s and the new Himalayans, or the Himalayan older version, the 411s, and we had a group of
Yeah,
16 that went and did what is now the new world's highest road, the Umling La, with a group up there. So when were you there?
I was 80. Would it be 84? I was there early
Okay.
84.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever get back to these parts of the world? Are there places that
I
you want to
have.
revisit?
I have been back. I have been back to some. I mean, I went back to Kathmandu, and I in '95, and I got a Enfield Bullet and rode it over the Himalayas into Lhasa, and went to
Brilliant.
Lhasa, which was brilliant.
Oh, how amazing.
Um, I haven't been back to Leh and Ladakh, but to be quite honest, I don't think I'd like to see it now. And I always, when I was there, the road was a single track bitumen, literally single track bitumen that just went all the way from Kashmir to Leh with nothing
Wow.
on it, completely
Wow.
deserted. I didn't even see a lorry, I didn't see another car, nothing.
Because I have this slightly sort of gold gilded concept of retracing the steps. My promise to myself has been that my son Atlas is 7 years old. This Land Rover was going to be, or may still be, his 21st birthday present. But on the surmise, on the promise that we go and retrace one of the routes that we did. The only thing that I hold in my head is Jupiter's Travels is an amazing book all about motorcycling. It's I forget the gentleman's name, but he did the journey.
Ed Simon.
Thank you, in South America, and then went and redid it, and only was disappointed by what he found, because you have the perception and it's new and unique the first time, and you always compare.
Mm. But also, the world has changed so much in the last 40 years, especially when it comes to travel. And it's, everywhere I've gone back to, I wish I never had. Some places
Yeah,
I didn't even recognize them. They were so busy and full of so many tourists and so many people,
yeah.
and it's, I mean, I'm not saying that's wrong. Of course, it's fantastic that people travel, and that's what people should do. It's so important that people travel and see the world and find out things for themselves, not just what they see and read. Um, and so, but it does change places. It can't not change
Mm.
places.
Sort of give
And I
credence
think,
to the concept of only discovering new places and pioneering in your own mind where you go, as opposed to retracing steps.
yeah, so I'd far rather go to new and different places.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what I've done. I mean, a handful of times I've gone back to places, and I really wish I hadn't.
Once you've gone and to the highest sort of roads in the world in the Himalayas, did you then sort of have a reason to come back or go back to Blighty? What was the sort of journey then It's a fairly, once you've arrived in sort of Turkey, that confluence, or the nexus of the continents and the religions and the landscapes, and you hit that sort of the traveled path of Europe, it just feels like almost like a parade lap to get home, doesn't it, at that stage?
Yeah, I mean, so I rode, yeah, from India into Pakistan, and then through Iran. And Iran was the country I worried about most, because
Mm.
my carnet wasn't valid for Iran, because when I was in Sydney, and I gave them the list of countries I was going to hoping to travel through. If the list included Iran, my carnet was going to cost me four and a half
I
thousand pounds.
remember this part. 4,400
For
percent of the value of the vehicle,
Yeah,
wasn't it? Yeah, I
exactly,
remember this exactly.
exactly. So I ended up paying £1,500 for my carnet, which was for everything else.
Yeah.
But if I wanted Iran, it was 4,500.
Yeah.
And when I
Okay.
was in Sydney, I thought, I'll worry about it when I get there.
Uh.
And maybe I'll never get there. Maybe I'll go a different route. Maybe I'll end up in Africa, China, or something. So I thought, and I didn't have the money anyway. I only had like $6,000, so I couldn't spend four and a half
Yeah.
thousand in
On
some
a piece
bond
of
in
paper.
in the
Yes.
UK. So I'll worry about it when I get there. But anyway, so Iran was always this big, big thing in my mind, this whole weight of getting through, and because it had been the Shah had been thrown out,
Yes.
sort of revolution had happened 2 years earlier, so it was a completely closed country. You couldn't find out anything about it at all. I managed to get a transit visa through the country, so I was allowed in, but my bike wasn't. So I rode through all the deserts of Western Pakistan, where there weren't any roads, and tracks through the deserts and everything. Got to the border with Iran, and I mean, extraordinary story where this guy. So I got my passport stamped in and out, and then I got to the customs guy for my bike, and in those days they had the list of countries written on the front of the car. Now I don't know
Yeah.
whether it's the same now or
Yeah.
not, and I thought, well, if I'm really confident, then maybe he won't notice that Iran isn't included on the front page. So I kind of flipped the front page over and I handed it to him just to kind of do his entry stamp, and hoping he wouldn't look at it. But of course, he turned the page back and he noticed that Iran wasn't there. And he gave me a really strange look. And then he started to tap the kind of list of countries, giving me this really odd look. And I didn't know what he was. And then all of a sudden, he kind of handed the carnet back to me. Then he got this pen and he slid this pen across the table towards me. And as he slid this pen across the table, he looked out of the window for about 30 seconds. So I picked up the pen. I neatly added Iran onto the list
This
of
is
countries.
gold. This is gold.
I neatly added Iran onto the list of countries. And then he turned back and I handed him the carnet. He flipped home, stamp, off you go.
I love it. I love it.
I
That's
mean,
the sort of diplomacy you want to work with.
and in Iran, of all countries, this country I had this huge fear for getting to. I'd never get in, and what was I going to do? And I would have to ride back through Pakistan and go down and get a boat to Africa, and all this stuff had been churning in my mind for like 8 months. And then it was just like that.
Flipped
Pen
in a
across
moment
the
as you got to
table,
the
right,
border.
Iran, stamp it in.
My
Brilliant.
grave disappointment was that my Iranian visa was refused as I was in India. I was due to come across India, cross Pakistan, come into Iran, and then spend 2 weeks traveling across into Turkey. That was always the plan. When that got refused, that was my moment of loss, because I'd look forward to that country more than any of them, because I'd heard such good stories of friendship, of hospitality, of conversations. What was your experience in Iran?
Iran, it was a mixed thing. The country was at war with Iraq, so that didn't kind of make things particularly easy.
Yes.
Because the country had been sort of, westernized for I don't know how many years the Shah was there, but obviously there's millions and millions of dollars of American money poured into the country. And these people told everything Western is great and embrace it and all the rest of it, and then literally overnight there's it's like going into the dark ages, and everyone having to cover up and all this, and so to me they seemed like a really sort of confused people, and they didn't really know what they were supposed to believe
And attend to, yes. Yeah.
but they were incredibly, I mean, I always got the feeling that they wanted to be really kind and hospitable, but they were really frightened because,
Yeah.
Tourists didn't visit Iran. You didn't go to Iran. I mean, they had these massive Hilton and Sheraton hotels that were completely empty because, of course, there wasn't any business. There were no tourists, nothing. It just literally overnight just stopped. And so we were literally the only Westerners traveling through the country. But we would, and it was extraordinary, but you felt that the people always felt that they were being looked at and watched,
Yes.
and there were lots of secret police
Suspicion.
everywhere. And so we would go to a cafe or something, and we'd sit down and try and order some coffee or tea or something. And the owner would come out and go, no, go, like this.
Right,
and literally just tell us to get up, just go. And then literally as we were just leaving, he would say, round the back. And so we'd kind of And then we'd go round the back, and then they'd open the door, and then there'd be the whole family there having lunch, and we'd sit there and we'd have lunch with them, and so they could be as kind and as hospitable as
Yes.
they could, but
Yeah.
they couldn't be
Be
seen to
seen
be.
publicly doing
It
that.
all had to be
Okay.
behind closed doors, and everything was like that. And so we were kind of, hurried in here and hurried in there, and all this kind of stuff. And they were looking around to see if there were anybody had seen us go into the back door. And I mean, they were frightened. They
Yes.
were
Yeah.
really scared. They were,
It's a shame, isn't it? Because from what I've learned, having not been there, my perception pre trying to even get there was that they love the outdoors. They love meeting other people, sharing food, offering drinks. I've just seen a guy, and his name's gone again. He's just cycled across Iran, and his Instagram reel that he did was just so beautiful. It was people stopping and offering fresh lemons. It was people giving food out of the window. His experience, and this is only probably 3 to 6 months ago, of bike packing across Iran has been one that refreshed my desire to go there. Who knows how open it will be in the next 5 to 10 years, but I just want to get back because all I hear is good news about the people.
yeah, the people, they were, to say, they were amazing. They were the friendliest, kindest people I think I met throughout the whole my whole trip. But I was only there for 7 days,
Oh,
and
yes,
I
because
had
it was
to ride
transit, of
three,
course.
400 miles every day. I mean, fortunately, thanks to the Americans, the roads were like billiard tables, so it was just amazing
Easy to
roads.
do the distances.
Yeah, and but I got hepatitis in the middle of it, so then I had to ride the bike with hepatitis because I didn't have any, I couldn't rest up at all. So,
Mm.
and I didn't get to see a lot of Iran. I mean, it really was just roads, bike riding, and trying to not feel too ill. And then I got out of Iran into Turkey, and then I kind of rested there. I mean, once I got out of Iran into Turkey, as far as I was concerned, I'd made it home.
You'd made it,
I was
yes,
home.
yeah,
I
yeah.
it was yeah, it was an easy ride home after that. It was all, I mean, it wasn't, but in my mind, the worst of it, as I say, Iran was this huge unknown country. So once I was through that, yeah.
I think certainly pre-trip, whenever I go away and do something, we are what we are fed by the media and what people deliver to us as their stories. The amount of scaremongered stories I had was, do not go through Pakistan. You'll be beheaded if you go in the north of Pakistan. Do not travel through Iran. When you're in Morocco, be careful. When you're driving through Libya, you've got to be really careful. The countries that I was almost in my mind fearing the most usually had Islamic leaders in them, and they were the friendliest and the most welcoming and the ones that wanted to share stories and food and conversation and opened up their arms to welcome you. Is that one of your sort of perceptions of some of the travel countries you'd been through?
Yeah, I mean, I think a certain, well, I think as a woman on your own in Muslim
This is
countries, you
so
do tend
different,
to
of
get
course. Yes.
it's slightly different.
Yeah.
And I mean, traveling, sometimes it was just easier to keep my helmet on like all day.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing that I had was that because women didn't really ride bikes then, well, and very few people rode around the world, and so they, as long as I was dressed up in all my very unflattering bike gear, and my helmet, my full face helmet, and I didn't wear any jewelry or makeup or anything like that at all.
Mm,
They assumed I was male. And
yeah.
and most of the time I just left it like that. So if I went to the market, I just went there with my helmet, left it on, got my food, put it in the back of my bike, and went off.
And
So
life was
I had
simpler
to be
that way.
careful in Muslim
Yeah.
countries. But certainly I mean, Pakistan was great. Northern Pakistan were incredibly friendly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Iran, as I've just said, nicest, most friendliest people on the whole trip. Java, I didn't find quite so friendly. I found that a
Yeah.
bit slightly more sort of aggressive. I don't know. I don't know why. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I was just unfortunate. So, yeah.
So once you sort of hit Turkey, the same gut feel I had, that I was back in Europe and it was just a case of counting down the miles to get back to England. When you got back there, was that sort of the end of the big dream, or was it the start of the next evolution for you?
Well, I did struggle when I got back, I have to
Yeah.
say. I really did struggle when I got home. For some bizarre reason, I thought people were going to be sort of vaguely interested in what I'd done, but of course, they weren't at all.
Yes.
I don't know whether it was lack of interest. I just don't think they could understand it. They couldn't understand it. They couldn't, relate to it. I mean, now it's different because so many
Mm.
more people travel. Not only travel, but do trips and motorcycle and so. But in those days, people didn't do it, and there was really nobody I could talk to, or nobody who could understand what I was talking about. So I got home and got really depressed for quite a long time. I locked myself in a basement virtually for about 6 months.
Wow.
And then I managed to drag myself out, and I stripped my bike down and rebuilt my bike, which took a bit of time. And then I decided to go back to uni and finish off my architecture. Um, and that was one great thing about the trip, because I saw these incredible buildings all over the world, and all that
Oh,
kind of
yes, for
reignited
architecture.
my love and enthusiasm for architecture. So even though I had a lousy degree first time round, so I decided to go back, finished off my architecture training, but I've always kind of struggled a little bit, and I think the trip completely changed my life, totally. I mean, I was just a totally different person when I came
Yeah.
back, and it really set me off on the path that my life has taken since then. I mean, I think, having gone through all I did and dealt with the most, you know, really not easy situations. Um, you feel you can do anything, and
Yes.
nobody can tell you no, and nobody can tell you it can't be done, and all that kind of stuff. You just ignore it, because if you're determined, you just know you're going to do it. You know you're going to get there. It was like when I bought the water tower. The local council said, we'll never give you planning to turn that into a house, and I just remember thinking, yeah, you will. And I just bought it, and I bought it at auction. And, so it was a big gamble, because it didn't have any planning or listed building consent. And they did turn me down, and it took a year and a half, and I had to go to appeal. But, I won on appeal, and 35 years later, here I still am, cradling up the
Nothing is
outside of it.
impossible. Nothing is impossible. If you have time and you have the contacts and the human connection, any border can be crossed. Any impossible mission becomes very much more possible. I think that's sort of the ethos of the brain change that you have by doing independent travel when other people say it's not possible, and you come back knowing you can. You don't need to stand on the parapets and say to them, I told you so. You just know inside that you can take on virtually anything yourself.
Exactly, exactly. And nobody can say you can't do it. And I think it's really, and I think taking risks in life is very important as well.
Mm,
You do
mm.
have to take risks and put yourself out there and take those steps forward. And I mean, two of the biggest risks I took, first of all, riding my bike around the world, and second, buying this water tower and spending
Hmm.
7 years doing it up. I mean, and on that basis, I won all these architectural awards for it. I decided to set up my own practice, which has been running now for 25 years.
Wow.
So it's a whole takes you off on a whole nother journey that I never would have had I not done that initial trip. And then, of course, when because my book was published 35 years after, so it wasn't published till
Yes.
2017.
Yeah.
And now I'm on a whole nother journey. Since
Yeah.
my book's been published, I get invited to do book tours, book events, bike tours all over the world. I give talks everywhere.
It's a doorway opener that you don't actually have the plan when you're doing the adventure that's what it'll lead to. I mean, some people do these days. They want to become the Instagram sensation. But when you were journeying, storytelling then was probably not in your headspace. How did you record your journey, or was it all kept in your head?
No, I had a diary, which I wasn't that great at keeping, but I wasn't too bad. And then my dad, who just loved new technology, he in the early 1980s they bought out those micro cassette recorders, those really
Yep.
small little
Yep.
tapes.
The dictation
So
machines. Yeah.
so he sent me one out to Sydney. And so we started to send tapes to each other. And
Love
I
it.
would only, I mean, I think you could put the tape in a machine on slow speed, which was 4 hours. So like every 2 or 3 days or whatever, I would just talk into this tape machine, and I'd say, "Oh yeah," and then I would, and it was usually me sort of going, "Oh," and then this happened today, or
This is
whatever.
brilliant. This is
But most of it
brilliant.
was really, and my dad kept all of my tapes. So when I was doing my book, I had my diary. I had all my tapes, well, from Australia back home. I had 2,500 photographs.
Wow.
And I was very meticulous in my diary. I kept like every date after I left Sydney. Every date I put where I stayed. I kept a note of all my petrol receipts, all the money, how much I spent on all my. I mean, the thing is, when I got into my guest house or into my tent, because I never used to ride after dark. So like 5, 6 o'clock, I mean, you just lie
You're
there with
doing the
nothing
office
to do.
admin. You're doing the office
Eh?
admin. You're doing the office
Exactly.
admin. I'm going to do something. I'm going to show you something now. This is going to make you laugh, okay? This is Colonel Mustard, who's been all around the world. And in the house next to my seat, in here, when you talk about your meticulous books, you're exactly the same as me, because this is my fuel log that's got in here Burkina Faso, Ghana, Benin, Namibia. It's got Libya. It's got I mean, it's got absolutely everywhere in the world. The
Yeah.
liters, the date, how far I'd gone. I think it's the
And
ADHD of a
and
traveller.
and did you put the exchange rate at that time?
Oh, I know, but I've got the value and I've got the liters, so I could probably backtrack it all. But yeah, it's exactly the same. I mean, this is so neat. It's
Yeah,
exactly the same as sort of you did in your head. So there's a common
exactly.
theme that runs through.
Yeah.
We might be these disheveled people with no plan, but we love the micro detail.
We are highly organized, disheveled
Yes.
people.
Yeah, absolutely. So storytelling then was, dictation. It was taking your diary. Storytelling today is a very different format. You are now, you're an Instagram star. You have your channel. That's your voice. That's how you maybe get the gigs. How do you feel you sort of migrated yourself into this world?
Well, I do. I mean, I am on Facebook and I am on Instagram, but I can't say I enjoy it very
No.
much at all. I sort of shy away from it quite a lot. I mean, I think I've done about 4 posts on Instagram in about the last year,
Okay. Yeah.
or
Same frequency.
certainly since the beginning of this year. And most
Mm.
of it actually, people tend to put something up about me, and then I just share it. And to
Yeah.
me, that's like posting.
Someone else has created content. No, thanks very
Someone
much.
creates the content. Hopefully,
Yeah.
it says something nice. I just share it, and so I'm kind of there, but I don't do. I just got more thing. I've just got more important things to do in my
Yeah.
life, to be
You're running a
honest.
business. Absolutely. When was the last time you were on a bike?
Oh, about 2 days ago.
Lovely. What was it? What is it?
Well, last week I was riding my trusty round the world R60/6, which I still
Nice.
ride,
Nice.
and then I got a BMW Paris Dakar, which I was riding a couple of days ago.
What year is that?
It's a 1998, so
The
it's
original. Oh,
it's the basic original, yeah, Paris
yeah. Is
Dakar.
that the twin round headlights at the front? Or is that
No,
the Africa
mine's
twin?
just
That's the
it's
Africa
even
twin, isn't it?
older
I'm
than that.
thinking.
Even older than
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Wow. Elspeth, listen, I know your water tower extremely well. And the reason I know is because you're in the south of England. You're outside a beautiful town called Godalming. My parents live in Bramley, which is only about 10 minutes drive away. And I have anonymously driven past that water tower so many times. I now know that you reside there. I'm coming back later in the year and I'm going to ask if I can come and say hi, not
Of
just to see
course.
you, but to see the bikes. I would love to come in, chew the fat, and just do this, but in person.
That would be really lovely. Seriously, that would be great.
Amazing. Amazing. And we've rolled over the normal hour because I'm not going to be able to sleep. I have the butterflies. I have the aspiration. I'll be on bikesales.com looking for a bike. I'm working out how I can sell a roof tent to fund one because you have been an amazing inspiration and you will continue to be for people that can say, I want to go out there and do something. You give them the catalyst to want to go and do it. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. All they got to do is get out and do it. That's all.
Yeah. And that is the essence of adventure in a nutshell. Get out there and do it. So to everybody from the Wild Earth audience, us Wild Earthlings want to say thank you so much to Elspeth Beard for the last hour of conversations. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.